Slightly different Megacan this week, as writer turned Evac medic Howard Hunt joins Megan and Konrad once again for an update from the Ukraine war zone, with tales of impossibly brave men with no legs, skies filled with drones, how to drive an ambulance on hilariously bad roads in the dark, and other scenes from the edge of the precipice. Meanwhile in Germany, it seems that some in the CDU think that actually being dependent on Russian gas might not be so bad after all. What the fucking actual fuck is going on?
In Berlin's heart, where news is unveiled, Megan and Konrad with German tales. The German news, it's tough to bear, but with Megacans, they're ready to head Konrad, daily news at hand. Megan feels to spare, time to crack those cans. With each sip she takes, the mag is her shield. But will it last the news? 'Cause that was the deal.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Megan's Megacan. I'm here in very sunny Berlin with Konrad Werner. Hi Konrad.
Hello.
And we have
Say my name.
we have a very special guest whose name I am going to pronounce correctly. We have Howard Hunt who is back. Hello.
Yay. Hello, Megan.
Hi.
Hello, Konrad.
Hello.
Very honoured to be back.
We are very delighted to have you and hear your updates from what you've been getting up to. You are, of course, a novelist turned journalist turned ambulance driver, I think.
Ambulance driver in Ukraine. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
in Ukraine chasing a story. I think the last time I was here, I was shamelessly looking for donations to buy some ambulances.
Yeah.
And so the good news is I bought them.
Yes.
And then I drove them to Ukraine. And one of them was a super duper ambulance, and the other two were really on the verge of falling to pieces and exploding in
so good.
Poland. Mm-hmm. And so the really funny thing is one of them just had no power and had no overtaking capacity on the highway, which was scary. But the other one had a busted clutch, and
That's always fun.
I had to drive the whole way in fifth. Couldn't get it down into first and second because if it stopped, I'd never get it started again. I went the whole way across Poland, which incidentally is a big country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that happened, then got it to the army mechanics in Lviv. They fixed them all up, painted them green, sent them to the front line where they are as we speak.
Woohoo! We can drink to that.
We can absolutely drink to that.
All right. We've gone classic today. Gentlemen, we have the OG Megacan, Jack Daniels and Cola, a Lynchburg lemonade.
Classic.
I think I've decided that my embargo on the US is off because they're the only ones that are still the decent size, unless you want to drink like a vodka energy drink, which I really didn't. And we have Jack and Ginger. What would you like?
Can I have Jack and Ginger, please?
You can.
It's got a very Irish
How am I gonna?
green
Can I
coloured
pass that?
can.
Can we pass that way?
All right, good.
And Konrad.
I'll have the Lynchburg lemonade, please.
I knew I was going to end up drinking the Jack and Coke, and I'm actually fine with it.
I don't mind.
No. I
You
think
sure?
I need a soothing. It's been a week.
It's been a
All
while.
right.
It's
It
actually
has
been
been.
10 days at this stage, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, this was so much fun last time. Mm-hmm. This was rocket fuel sort of midway through the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tastes like spring.
Oh,
Tastes
mine is
like April.
delightful.
The Jack and Ginger is a very good one. I do like it.
Yep.
This one is also good.
Okay, so shall I recap?
Yeah.
When I went to Ukraine first time around and had no idea what I was doing, I spent a couple of months working on a rescue bus. Mm-hmm. And so that was pretty cool. That was where I got first contact with wounded soldiers from Ukraine, many of whom had amputations. I didn't do very much actual medical work because we had a super competent doctor who was running the show. So I was mainly a stretcher carrier and would do a little bit of work, and that was kind of okay. After 3 rotations, I asked if I could get in an ambulance, and I was told we don't got no ambulances, and we also don't got no money for petrol, and also non-Ukrainian speakers in a crew, that's just hell.
Yeah.
But if you pull a crew together and you get ambulances, you can come and run your own show. So I did a crowdfund and raised more money than I was expecting. I was just looking to buy one ambulance. I wound up buying 3 and got them to Ukraine.
How do you buy an ambulance?
Well,
Like,
the funny
on
thing
eBay?
is, no, I bought one pretty much via Kleinanzeigen.
Yeah, I was going to
that
say, I
was-
bet it's on Kleinanzeigen.
It was 100% on Kleinanzeigen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also bought one. Some guy in the UK found one, like an English, right-hand drive. That was all. It was a 4-wheel drive. It was
Oh my
great.
God, so please tell me this is the one with the busted clutch. So you
No.
can't
The busted clutch was an Italian
wrong side of the
Volkswagen
road.
T4 that we'd sort of it's probably my favorite just because of the absolute hell that was involved in
bonded.
getting it there. I really
Trauma
bled
bonded.
in this particular
Yeah.
vehicle. It was just such a nightmare. But I loved that one the most, and we got them there. We got them painted green. The army mechanics fixed them up then out the front, so that was cool.
Amazing.
But in the process of this, I then began to realize that there were further adventures that could be had. And so I will tell you about them at length.
Good.
Okay, the first thing that happened was the Hospitallers have a couple of bases. One is in Kyiv, and the other is in an undisclosed location near the border of Donetsk. And they got a fantastic base, which was nearly blown up while I was there. And so it was one of these things where the Russians just randomly took out a sort of a Soviet era, I guess it was a cultural center, just solid concrete on the opposite side of the road. Honest to God, had it hit the base, the damage would have been immeasurable. You would have lost a lot of medics and a lot of vehicles. And that was something where we then had to evacuate, and that has, cost us. And the thing that's really tricky with Russia is you just never know. Were they actually trying to hit us and they failed, or were they just randomly firing rockets and hoping for the best? And so much of what's happening in Ukraine is that. And so that's really tricky. Around the same time, I did one rotation near the front line, and I did it in a little village. I won't tell you where we were exactly, but it is near a fantastic little town in Donetsk Oblast called Kramatorsk. And I think I've mentioned this before. It's kind of like Austin, Texas. It's a kind of a groovy little town, and it would be an absolute crime if Russia actually was able to claim the whole thing, because you'd be losing sort of a Ukrainian Austin, Texas. But we were in the village houses, and we were essentially working at night. And we're doing our evac at night because the drone warfare has improved to the point where the sky is full of drones, and the drones now can go 10 kilometers further than the zero line and unhesitatingly blow up medical workers because the Russians don't adhere to the Geneva Convention.
No.
So we spent time under a bridge in the middle of the night, and eventually what would happen would be a vehicle would roar up with some wounded soldiers in the back, and we'd haul them out of the vehicle and throw them in the ambulance and then drive them to what is called a stabilization point. And a stabilization point's like a little mini field hospital. You'll have some medics and you'll have some nurses and you'll have some beds for people to recover on. But really what happens at a stabilization point is you'll get a soldier to a transportable state.
Yeah.
So you can then drive them to a hospital. And so this was sort of really the full extent of the work that I did. I was thinking I would be an ambulance driver until I discovered that I couldn't work the radio because the radio was entirely in Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And so I just became a spare pair of hands as usual. And I was working with this cool girl. She was from America with Ukrainian parents, so her call sign was America. She was really seriously good. And so
She had come from America.
she'd come from
because of
America
the
to help,
war?
and she actually ended up
wow.
doing 10 rotations. She was really impressive. I
And
was
what is a
impressed by her.
rotation? That's like
It's usually 2 weeks. So it's essentially you motor out, you live in a sort of village house with no running water and a million cats. Yeah, you go out, you do stuff, and then two weeks later you'll get replaced.
And doesn't it involve this evacuation? Doesn't it involve driving an ambulance at night with no lights?
Yes, and there was a lot of
as fast as you can along bumpy
as
country
a slightly
roads.
anxious driver, this is, I mean, it's nightmarish for
the
a huge variety of reasons, but also this is making me
but I mean
sweat.
but the roads are hilariously bad. The roads are bomb-pocked. They're sort of great big potholes and
Yeah.
and it is nightmarish. Because I wasn't driving, I was also in with a really good crew where we had a fantastic Ukrainian driver who could work the radio, and she had a lot of experience. And there's crazy things that you can do where if you know you're about to drive over a hole, you actually just turn the wheel, which redistributes the weight of the ambulance in midair as you go over these holes. There's a whole technique that we practice doing. It's just some crazy nonsense. My job then was taking vital signs from soldiers, and vital signs in this case is mostly blood pressure and sort of the oxygen saturation level in the blood.
Yeah.
And there are two ways you do that. One is with a pressure cuff and a stethoscope, and the other is with this little pulse oximeter that you clip over a thumb, and it sort of shines a light into your capillaries and calculates your, the oxygen level in the blood. And these things are cumbersome, and you're doing it, at night while wearing a headlamp that's got a red bulb in it. And there's not one soldier in the ambulance. There's anywhere between 1 and 4. And they all are at different levels of experience, where the old sea dogs, the ones who've really seen combat, sort of adhere to this principle where it's just uncool to show any pain or emotion at all. So you'll get them with a gunshot wound and they'll be like, I am fine. And then at the same time, you'll have these young mobilized guys who, it's the first time they've even seen blood. And so they'll take mild shrapnel wounding, but they will be screaming as though they're dying.
Wow.
And then you've got right, but then you've got me in the back, and I'm working with a photocopied American standard, NATO standard, Defense Department DD 1380 casualty collection card, which in the
always has to be paperwork.
There always has to be paperwork,
regardless of how extreme the circumstances. Yeah.
Right.
And basically in the Ukrainian case, it's on a photocopied piece of paper. The whole thing is in Ukrainian. I've kind of figured out what I'm supposed to do, but because the whole thing was so stressful, and because the visibility was so bad, and because trying to get a blood pressure signal with a stethoscope where you are, you're putting on a pressure cuff, you're sliding a stethoscope under the cuff, you're listening, you're doing that thing where you're deflating the cuff and waiting to get the systolic beat and then the diastolic beat. It's just not possible when people are screaming in the ambulance and at night, and the difficulty factor of this was... And so long story short, pretty much every single reading I took was wrong over the entire 2-week period. And after a couple of days... in frustration, I started having conversations with myself along the lines of, why are we not doing this on a tablet? Why are we not using digital technology to do this? Which is a question I started asking everybody, including all the doctors that I know. And the answer is because the technology really doesn't exist to do that yet. You can't actually do some kind of biometric signal and wirelessly transmit the data because we don't have the sensors that can do it. It's really piece of paper, pressure cuff, stethoscope.
Yeah.
But we're also really have entered the age of AI. And so machine learning and AI can actually start solving a lot of those problems to the point where you can build a predictive tablet. And so I was thinking about this. I talked to a bunch of doctors. I sort of really came back to Berlin in sort of a real mood of failure, not just because of the way the war was heading, but just because my personal contribution, apart from ambulances, was pretty inadequate. And what I thought is, I had done a tech startup 10 years ago. Why not apply some of the startup building skills to this? And so I developed a pitch deck, which I sent to a whole lot of people, including friends of mine in the Czech Republic and Ukraine who have experience building this stuff. And they looked at it and they went, yeah, we could do that. And we know people who are AI specialists who might be able to build what you're looking to build. And so that's essentially what I'm doing at the moment. I'm looking around trying to raise funds to build a digital tablet and biometric wireless sensor that can record and report the vital sign signals of wounded soldiers near the Ukrainian front line, transmit it to a tablet that fills itself in automatically, and then use AI to extrapolate the data where you can start making predictions of things. And the thing that I was saying to Megan earlier is one of the really, big indicators of whether somebody is dying of massive blood loss is you just look at them. And if their skin is pallid and their lips are sort of, turning blue, you know this is a problem. But if you're in an ambulance and you're wearing a red headlamp, you can't see that, because everything is red. So there's no visual way of determining it. A kind of a biometric sensor on a tablet would solve that problem. So that is essentially what I'm doing in Berlin.
Uh-huh.
I have other stories, but that's what I'm doing.
And you're trying to raise money from all the official places to raise money for to build this thing.
Yeah.
So
the startup that I did 10 years ago was a gaming startup.
Okay.
And no one had any interest at all.
No.
So I just hit a wall of no and kept banging my head against that wall. And then in the end, I wound up raising money in Ireland.
Just really raking it in.
Yeah.
Companies we refuse to tax, and then we won't build any houses for people to live in. But yes,
that's essentially
good
it.
for startup investment.
well, good for startup investment. And it's sort of a little bit similar, except I'm getting a lot more yes for this. And I think part of the reason is
it's
with the craziness that is going on in America, Europe has started to realize, oh dear, we can't bank on having America to sort of save us if, things go horribly wrong. So this whole easing of the debt brake and all of this kind of stuff, the easing is for, I guess, funding of the military, funding of war tech. And in my case, I'm at the nexus of med tech and war tech. So a lot of the people who just were flat no have sort of said, well, maybe. And so that's where I am. But what I've just heard today is it's still going to be really slow. If I'm going to be raising money by the official, sort of government channels, I'm looking at anywhere between 3 and 6 months to get funded. And I don't think we have 3 to 6 months. I think we really need to get back near the front line and start tabulating this data as soon as possible.
So you've had lots of these sort of meetings with bureaucrats explaining things in Germany. In a shameless pander. I've been talking to a team from Berlin Partner. Okay.
And the woman who is in charge of my particular case is young and very good.
Yeah.
And I would say hungry to have some success stories. So she ran a couple of meetings and I was really very impressed by her. And so it was her that I visited a couple of hours earlier who said, listen, we really think this thing could work. Listen, we really think this is going to take longer than you might want to take.
Yeah.
And so that was actually a bit of an eye opener for me.
Well, okay.
Yep.
And also, meanwhile, you've also been writing stories for the FAZ, the Frankfurter Allgemeine.
Yep.
Or the famous German newspaper.
And the stories that I've written are steeped in tragedy.
Yeah, so tell us about André Solomon.
Okay, before I tell you about André Solomon, I will tell you about my friend Mary Chris, who is a person who I was friends with, who actually got killed at a stabilization point near the front. And that was one of those things really where they had done a rotation and there was no work. It was one of those things where the village was quiet, there was nothing going on. And on the second last day of the rotation, all of a sudden the Russians started, firing artillery on the road outside their stabilization point. And got her on a double tap in the sense that, rockets hit the road, everybody sheltered in the basement. 30 minutes later, they came out of the basement, and then there was more artillery, and this thing happened. But this really hammered home to me, the fact that this, firstly, it's real because it's somebody that but also the nature of it really coming out of nowhere. We're all doing the right things. We're all trying to protect ourselves. We're all operating with the understanding that this can happen. And if it happens, it could happen by accident. But this really was a case where somewhere along the line, the Russians managed to hit something that, was valuable and was really devastating for everybody that was concerned. So that was the first thing that happened. A little bit after that, I was contacted by a friend of mine who works, I'm thinking, for the Secret Services. So I've got a friend who I think is a spook. She would argue that she is not. She's just a humble woman doing, whatever it takes, blah, blah, blah.
Well, then she would say that, wouldn't she?
Yeah, she would say that, wouldn't she? Yeah. But she was like, look, we've got a guy who was a commander who was known to the 100th Brigade, who was like really a super, super, super good guy. And he needs a new pair of legs. Maybe you could appeal to the good people of Germany. And so I wrote a piece about that for the FAS. I wrote a piece about my dead friend as well, but the piece about the guy has just been published. This came out, I think, 3 weeks ago. And it was a sort of a similar circumstance. He had not seen very much action, but then he was sent down to defend a town called Avdivka. Avdivka is a name most of you will not be familiar with, but many of you may be familiar with the name Bakhmut.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bakhmut was essentially a thing where, for whatever reason, Evgeny Prigozhin's Wagner group were commanded to take Bakhmut at all costs. I think mainly as a sort of a promotional win for Putin. And so from the Ukrainian perspective, it was really a case of, you are not taking Bakhmut. We're going to stop you from taking it so you cannot have that promotional win. And as a consequence, thousands and thousands of Russians and Ukrainians died. And then Russia got Bakhmut, and when Ukraine retreated, it was really a little bit too late. The same thing happened with Avdivka. It was one of those things where when I was on the rescue bus, we were going to a field hospital near Avdivka, and I was actually transporting lots of soldiers with amputations. It was really the first time that I saw this, soldiers with limbs missing. And we would drive on the bus for 2 hours from Avdivka to Dnipro. And that's a long bus trip, and you can talk to people, and some people speak English. It's really kind of complicated. But that particular battle was where this guy, Andrei Solomon, also fought, ran his own company, was highly respected, and got blown up by a drone. Drone warfare really kicked into high gear in September 23. So that is where all of a sudden this whole idea of we'll just flood the front line with drones. That's really when it hit. So he would have been hit by a drone between May and March 24. And it was a thing where he was covering his men. Russians had taken the village, and a drone dropped a grenade at his feet and blew his legs to bits. The point of the story that I wrote for the FAS, and this connects to some other stuff, is what had actually happened to his legs was not 100% disastrous. His right leg was ripped to bits kind of way up the thigh, but his left leg was intact below the knee. So he had a working left knee joint. But when you do combat medicine, what you are trained to do is you have tourniquets. And a tourniquet is the thing you wrap around your leg, and then you tighten a thing that's called a windlass. And what that happens is you tighten it really tight. It squishes your leg together, and it can actually squish your arteries shut if your arteries are open. And this, if you put this on, I've done a million demos with these where I've put them on myself, and they hurt like crazy. But if you put them on, you won't bleed out. But soldiers are taught in Ukraine to put them on. It hurts like crazy, and they're not allowed to take them off. Only a medic is allowed to take them off. But if you keep a tourniquet on your legs for more than 2 hours, then all of the tissue starts to die. And because of the way that drone warfare is, you have, if you're blown up at 10 o'clock in the morning, you have to wait until the cover of darkness before an evacuation vehicle can get to you, because operating in the cover of darkness to avoid the drones. So pretty much anyone who has been blown up in the daytime and has put tourniquets on is being loaded onto my bus, having gone to a field hospital and having their legs or arms amputated. This is the kind of brutal reality of the drone war. And so I was on a bus, I saw a bunch of...
Why is it particularly why is that drones? Because these are so isolated attacks that it's not...
Well, the sky is now full of drones.
Or it's just happening more that people are getting hit more.
Well, it's kind of the strategy. I did a combat medic course with a bunch of salty dudes with beards and tattoos, and they were all from, Scandinavia, and they're the toughest guys I'd ever met. And they were all wanting to transition to combat medicine just to get away from the front line because it was full of drones. And these are the guys who had volunteered. They come down from Sweden and Denmark, and all they wanted to do was, stand in a trench all day and shoot bullets at Russians. And what they're saying now is, this is the survival chances are really low.
Yeah.
Because it's kids with headsets, 10 kilometers away piloting these things that sort of crash into you, and, or they'll have a thermobaric warhead attached and they'll just explode on the ground and bathe everything in fire. It's pretty horrific. And so that was the thing. That's what happened to Andre, and it happened to him early in the game.
Yeah.
So I think what is happening a year later is probably even worse, and I will tell you another story that connects to that. But he had that situation. He had tourniquets on. No one was allowed to remove them unless a medic did it properly, which meant the second he put them on, he had to leave them on until he got to a stabilization point, which automatically meant that they had to remove both his legs. Yeah. And so what you've got is sort of, like a supremely good commander, now in a wheelchair with no legs, because of bad field medicine. And I wrote this and I said this.
Well, is it bad field medicine, or is it just because that field medicine is doing what you can, like that is just the nature of the beast?
It kind of is and it kind of isn't. My friend, the Spook, sort of reviewed my piece for the Faz, and she said, you're not even allowed to think this, let alone say it, because it is critical of the military administration. But what it simply is...
What could have saved his leg?
You would do a thing that we are taught in the West, which is called a tourniquet conversion.
Right.
Which is, if we take someone to a field hospital, the first thing the medics do is cut all their clothes off and have a look at them, in their underpants and figure out what's wrong. If the people who had saved Andre and had dragged him to a garage had cut all his clothes off, what they would have found is he's got 2 tourniquets up near his groin. The right leg is shredded above the knee. Mm-hmm. The left leg is shredded below the kneecap. So what you can do is you can put a second tourniquet on below the knee, above the wound, and then very, very gently, experimentally loosen the wound up near the tourniquet up near the groin. And it's sort of trial and error, but if you do that, what you can find is you've got a tourniquet below the knee that is stopping the bleeding. And so he's going to lose below the knee, but he's going to have a working kneecap. Mm-hmm. In the case of our guy, he's got nothing. He's essentially sort of truncated at the groin. And so this is bad field medicine. But I also got into a lot of trouble articulating this because this is also Ukrainian doctrine. So if you're on the field, what you're really taught is don't loosen a tourniquet. A doctor has to do that. And fair enough, if you don't know what you're doing and you loosen a tourniquet, you bleed out.
Yeah.
But what you end up with is a lot of people with really savage amputations.
But wait, what happened to Andre?
At the moment, he's in a field hospital. I wrote a piece for the Faz. Some
But
nice...
people asked you to write this piece for him, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Like, people were saying, can you write about him? Because...
Yeah, because he's a good one and he really needs it.
And what does he need?
He needs a brand new set of prosthetic legs, preferably from Ottobock, which is, one of the, the premium prosthetic legs manufacturers on the planet, which happens to be based in Germany. Okay. And the thing is...
That is a thing that Germans, I would say, are very good at.
Robot legs.
You absolutely rely on them to do
Yeah. Robot legs for sure. And also the same thing where it's not just robot legs, like here, have a robot leg. We're now going to teach you how to wear it and walk in it, and we'll upgrade it, and we'll do all this stuff. This is where Germany is like the best country on the planet.
Yeah, we're also selling loads of the arms to like places that arguably shouldn't be. But at least we're going to
robot legs. We like robot legs, and the Germans are really good at this.
Yeah.
And so
did he get his robot legs?
We are sort of in the process.
Okay.
It's it is one of those things. There was a lot of heavy guilting in the article, and I was forced to rewrite it by my editor. Mm-hmm. He was just like, "What are you doing? You can't do this." The piece I was quite happy with.
Guilting of the Germans.
So come on, Germany, let's give this guy some legs. They were just like, you can't do that. Yeah. So I wrote a sort of a less histrionic piece.
But it still worked.
It still works. A guy from Austria got in touch with the Faz and went, I want to give this guy some money for legs. And so he was talking a not insignificant sum, so we'll see if that thing works. But I spent 2 hours with him, and this was an extremely cool guy. And it was kind of funny. You could sort of see the power because I was there talking to him, and there'd be knocks on the door and nurses would come in, with a glass of water. They'd be like, here, a glass of water for you, sir. So, he's obviously, a bit heroic. It was really nice. But seeing seeing him in a wheelchair in his room, dealing with it,
tough.
that's bad. And so the sort of final bit of, my monologue on drone warfare is this. Got ambulances, took them to the front, discovered that drone warfare is now so great, you actually need drone jamming antennas for your ambulances, which is not something you ever needed before. You would have drone jamming antennas on your utility vehicles up the front, because that's where the drones are. But drones are now sailing 10 kilometers further into Ukrainian soil and unhesitatingly blowing up ambulances because the Russians don't respect the Geneva Convention. And so we're at the point now where we are attaching drone jamming antennas to ambulances. And so I had this moment in Ivano-Frankivsk where I was shopping for drone jamming antennas. As you do. And I kind of knew I was onto something because the engineer who came out and sort of spoke to me in very urgent English was like, yes, our antennas are the best antennas, but if you use them, you will die. And we're like, why is that? And it's
no, sir. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to achieve.
That is really the opposite. And this is he was like the world's worst salesman, because what he was essentially saying is the amount of power that you need to sort of power these huge antennas that operate at low frequencies is basically putting out radiation that is harmful to the human body. It'll microwave all of the fluid in your body if you're driving around running these things for long periods of time. And so it's, your choices are get blown up by drones or, cook yourself by...
What are they running on that's going to radiate you?
Just massive power. Like just these massive...
Is that science?
Is it science? I mean, the bottom line is, I don't know.
Who knows? He seems fine. We're going to take him...
No, but they were saying, I mean, if you're doing this, then you got to wear a poncho that's full of lead. And here's the lead poncho you have to wear.
You're dealing with such...
Yeah. And you got to, just sort of, put all of this lead plating on the ceiling of your ambulance and all that stuff. So that was horrifying. I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds just awful. And then all of a sudden the Russians had a breakthrough, and this is sort of the end part of this story. What inevitably happens is Ukraine will invent something, but not necessarily have the resources to mass produce it. And the Russians will get it and they will go, well, that sounds like a good idea. And then Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin will go, it is so. We will make 1 million of these. And
this time, that's your job.
Yes.
Do it.
Yeah, if you're a child in school, you're either learning to be a drone pilot or you're making drones. And what it is, which is really amazing, is I've seen drone jamming antennas work. And the ones that are operating with lethal power want to put a drone down at about 500 meters. Because if you put it down at 500 meters and it falls out of the sky and explodes, it's not going to kill you. You want to put these things away in a large distance. If you put one down in the vicinity of where you are, it'll blow up and blow you up. So you've got these clouds of drone jamming, whatever it is, your radio signals that are jamming your drones. Now the Russians fly a kind of a mothership drone outside jamming range. So you've got a drone flying high up in the sky. Attached to the bottom of this drone, like sort of Thunderbirds, if you remember the puppet show Thunderbirds.
Do I?
Yeah. Basically, you've then got...
Which number of Thunderbird are we talking?
I think we are talking Thunderbird 4, which was my favourite Thunderbird. But doesn't Thunderbird 4 have like Thunderbird 2 inside it?
Thunderbird 2 has Thunderbird 4 inside it,
Thunderbird 2 has Thunderbird 4.
It's the green one.
Yeah, the green one. I love the green one, yeah. But you've got a mothership drone.
Yeah.
Attached to the bottom of it is another drone which is carrying your warhead. But at the back of the drone that is sitting at the bottom is, I am not joking, a spool that contains 10 kilometers of fiber optic cable. And so what happens is, this is where we are in the war right now. Mothership drone out of jamming range drops a drone that is then flying, that is powered by fiber optic cable. And this thing is unjammable. And so this thing will fly through your cloud of, sort of jamming signal and will hit you. And it will not only hit you, but the pilots who are piloting it have this fabulous visual because it's all fiber optic. And so the thing that compounds this and makes it even worse is Ukraine is full of these perfectly straight roads. because it's
Yeah.
so huge. So you're anywhere near the Russian border, the highway that is in the direction of Russia is not twisting and turning. It's just an absolute straight road, perfect for these fiber optic drones to sort of travel down. And so there was an organization called Base UA, which was total humanitarian aid. And there was a guy that was sort of in our circle of people that we work with, whose name was Eddie Thomas. And his ambulance got hit by one of these drones. We think it's one of these drones. But it hit him with such accuracy, the drone actually just went and hit the driver's seat of the ambulance. Like, they were able to pinpoint it with the accuracy of taking out the driver. So that happened. He got blown up. Same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So the upshot of which is that you don't need those.
No, we don't. We don't need to cook ourselves with sort of
Right.
these great big power supplies. But
Okay. Well,
yeah, well, that's good.
no lead ponchos,
Oof.
but also possible just
But possible
Oh,
possible death.
God. This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
also-
Okay, so when are you going back? What's your plan?
My plan now is to raise a pile of money. I want to enter the European Defence Fund Business Accelerator Program,
Right.
where it's kind of, an accelerator program, and I'll be hanging out with a bunch of military dudes who've invented stuff. And what I want to do on the 9th to the 11th of May is pull a team together and enter the EDF Hackathon, where I will build this AI tech, where we build a tablet that can pull information from a sensor. And as it turns out, when I did my old startup, I was in China, and one of the teams from China has actually built the exact sensor that we need. And so when I called the guy and I went, I hear you have built a sensor, he was like, I remember you. Yeah, you can have one.
Oh, cool.
And so I think next week I get some sensors, and then I talk to these AI guys in Prague, and then I see if we want to go on this big, weekend hacking in I think it's in Germany somewhere. It's not Berlin. So that's kind of it. I want to join this accelerator with a team. I want to do this hackathon. I would like to win this hackathon.
Yeah.
And then, raise some money. And then the plan really would be to take the technology back, set up a stabilization point in Kharkiv, midway between Vovchansk, which is right on the Russian border, and the city of Kharkiv, where I know people who have a hospital. Set up our own stabilization point, use this technology, and then start building data sets of wounded soldiers who we do this sensor measuring of their vital sign information. If we can do that, and we have thousands of soldiers, we can then build a full predictive AI data set and library, which can solve the problem of it's dark, you're in an ambulance with a lot of screaming people,
Right.
it's a red headlamp, you've got no idea what's going on, but the sensor says that guy goes first, and that's the guy that goes first.
And how much money do you need?
Oh, I'm just thinking so much money. But I mean, to start, I think we could sort of get this show on the road for about 150,000.
Okay.
And then good old Germany has got these grants that might turn up for between 200 and 400,000. But the thing that's the real sort of chef's kiss in all of this is that the European Defence Fund has these funding projects for things where you can validate the innovation, and that's millions.
Bit out of our patrons' range.
Yes,
I
this is
reckon.
true. Yes, we're not going to.
They don't have to pay for all of it at once. They
Yes.
can,
No,
yeah. But it is.
we can't
like,
really do a Kickstarter.
Yeah,
Just
you
give
know,
them-
the fundamental difference here is these guys are fighting. We are theorizing. If
Yeah.
the Bundeswehr was trying to build something like this, it would be in a simulation somewhere where there are really good cappuccinos, and a bit of running around and a bit of sensor data and a bit of AI prediction and blah, blah, blah. But that's not going to give you what happens. I did a course which was called Prolonged Field Care, and they did some sneaky stuff. There was a room full of actors who had been given scripts, and we'd all jetted in as medics, and we're trying to keep them alive until the evacuation ambulances turned up. And there was a girl who was fine. She was, eating a sandwich. She had a bit of a headache and her eye was a bit out of focus. And then 2 hours in, she just coded and died because she had sort of blood collecting at the back of her head, and we didn't spot it. And it was a simulation, but, my team failed because my team always fails. But if it was real life or death, she would have died. And the thing is, a sensor would have picked that up. So there is real.
Is there also there's just like also like presumably there's not an unlimited supply of like medic. That's also a problem. So you're trying to deal with that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, with Hospitalis, they lost a lot of really great medics. And so what is happening is you're winding up with people like me who have basic skills. And, we're there and we're willing and we're not stupid.
But it's difficult to do it in the back of an ambulance.
Super.
In the dark
well, I would beg to go further than difficult. I would sort of say, for me, it was impossible.
Yeah.
And I felt really bad about it. It's awful sucking, and this was really sucking, and it made me so angry. I'm just like, well, let's attempt to solve this problem by a different approach.
And do you still have when you say your team, are they still this sort of ragtag group of English
sort
speakers, international?
I mean, the funny thing was,
Evac.
when I turned up, everybody was like, who are you, old man? Yeah. And then my lovely friend from the Red Cross turned up. This is a guy that I did the Rettungssanitäter course with, and he spoke fluent Ukrainian and like super, super, super good guy. And so it was really funny. Everybody looked at me and sort of was like, we don't understand what this guy is doing. And then I brought my friend Tony in, and he started speaking Ukrainian, and they were like, aha. Suddenly this makes sense. And then we hooked up with this guy called Ben, and Ben's, an American with Ukrainian parents. His Ukrainian is fluent. And we were able to get a team of foreigners in for the first time into the Hospitalis combat medic course. And the crazy thing is, that is a tough course. And one of the things that they do is they really turn everybody against each other. They sort of play off teams against each other. And this particular team really understood that and didn't fight, and actually just had a very, very smooth 2 weeks, and everybody graduated, in spite of the fact that half of them didn't speak Ukrainian. And that was actually a real win. And I think the thing with Hospitalis is they're losing lots of men to mobilization. And, Ukrainians are super proud, and I don't think they're in a hurry to sort of accept help from foreigners, but it's going to be a situation where more of that will be helpful, especially if this thing keeps going the way it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you think... it's obviously amazing when people go and volunteer their individual things, but I can also understand Ukrainians just being like, can you actually just fucking tell Mats to just give us all of the fucking cash?
For sure.
And you fucking
yeah, for sure.
I can't even talk about what Zelensky had to go through in the White House. It genuinely makes me incredibly upset.
Yeah, me too.
To watch bullying on that scale.
Yep.
And I think, you are obviously solving the problems that you can see, but people just need to do their fucking jobs. And if you have been elected to office, do your fucking job. Just I'm not a big proponent of let's all go to war, but this idea that anything other than supporting Ukraine in defending their sovereignty against Russian imperialism is good for the rest of Europe. What are we fucking talking about? It's like these people trying to be like, oh, the logic behind Trump's tariffs. What are you fucking talking about? We've done this before. We know how it goes.
Yeah, no, it's a
Run the fucking playbook properly.
Yeah, sure. Agreed.
I'm quite drunk.
Megacan.
One Megacan.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the Jack and Coke for you, everyone.
Right. Okay. For the reference,
nearly cried, and I'm very red in the face and angry.
Yep, the Jack and Ginger was good. Went down smoothly.
It's delicious, isn't it?
It's delicious. Yes.
Well, I can talk about. I do know what they are talking about. We've been talking about what
I'm not going to want to know, am I, Konrad?
Well, it was just like a story because the Nord Stream pipelines thing. That was a big deal a few years ago. Merkel helped to build them. Merkel was there when they were opened.
It's fine. It's fine.
But one of the big arguments also was Putin waited for two things: waited for the pipeline to be finished, and waited for Merkel to retire. Because the thing is, Merkel might have been able to unite Europe in a way that Scholz absolutely surely wasn't. But the pipeline was really crucial with this, and so
also I feel like Mutti Merkel could tell him off in Russian, and he was a bit scared of that, to be honest, because he's just a little boy having a tantrum.
But anyway, what's the story with Nord Stream?
Well, it was like a huge deal for a long time, and it became a sticking point for the different parties. Obviously, it was blown up by people unknown. And just recently, an American businessman suggested that he wanted to buy them, what was left of the Nord Stream pipelines, and presumably with a view to reopening them when there is peace again with Russia. And then what was really weird, as a CDU Bundestag member actually welcomed this idea in a long LinkedIn post that he wrote, and he started saying how enterprising our American friends are. That was one of his lines.
Right.
And then he said, when peace is restored and the weapons fall silent between Russia and Ukraine, and hopefully that will happen soon, relations will normalize, the embargoes will be lifted sooner or later, and of course gas can flow again, perhaps this time in a pipeline under US control.
I'm sorry. When did he write this fucking LinkedIn post? This is why I think LinkedIn shouldn't exist, by the way. These are just unserious business people talking about things they don't fucking understand. Who is this?
He's called Thomas Barreis,
What?
Bundestag member for the CDU.
Good. When did he post this?
Beginning of March.
Oh, so in the new reality of the US is not...
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
What was kind of so surprising about this was because under the last government, this was the one thing that they were being chased about. The SPD was under all kinds of pressure because everyone was saying it's because of the SPD that we became so energy dependent on Russia. And people dug up all these stories. Friedrich Merz, who is CDU leader now, the presumptive next chancellor, was saying that if we found out any more about this SPD's connections with Russia, I think we would be surprised. He made these sort of
right. He did the conspiracy thing.
Yeah, he kind of And the president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who was foreign minister under Merkel, of the SPD, he actually apologized publicly. This is like couple of years in 2022. He apologized for his role in, saying that he said I trusted Russia too much or something like that at the time, and now the CDU is all saying, well, what's wrong with Russian gas again,
Yeah.
And it's and unsurprisingly, the one party that really welcomed this, had I guess.
Bundesrat Wagenknecht
and the AfD.
And the
AfD.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Bundesrat Wagenknecht isn't even really a thing anymore.
No. Basically, that was the one thing that happened, is we lost, Wagenknecht, and we lost Lindner. So,
Yeah.
Sweet.
And not only that, it's not only would you be dependent on Russia for gas again, you would also, if it was owned by an American company, you'd be dependent on America. So it'd be like the opposite of what everyone is talking about,
Yeah, but I mean, that is the interesting thing, where Trump is tariffs for everybody except Russia because we're trying to do a deal right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what does Putin have on Trump? It's like, nothing. They're just the same and they're going to help each other. How do we not see this? It makes me so angry. And what? Why won't Germany learn anything?
I don't know.
You also heard this, one other thing to talk about, Germany not doing things. My most horrifying news this week was that this is just the Berlin state, is trying to deport 4 people. Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
Without any criminal convictions?
Yeah.
They've said you have to get out by the 21st of April because you have been involved in pro-Palestinian activity. There is no criminal convictions. There is scant evidence. And 3 of them are EU citizens. There's an American, a Pole, and 2 Irish people. And Netanyahu is out visiting Orban. And Orban's like, I'm just going to go away from the International Criminal Court now. That's cool.
Yeah.
And we're all like, but you guys, you were involved in a protest in the Free University in Berlin. So you have to be deported.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I can't. I just can't.
No, I mean, I have to say, I find it really hard to read the news. And I'm someone who just leaps out of bed and reads the news all the time, and I'm just like, oh wow,
It's tough.
this
man.
is
I think it's tough because, and maybe this is because when you look back at crises and stuff, it's with kind of hindsight and everything. And I'm sure there was a lot of people at you kind of have this idea that you're going to be led through these crises by some kind of like statesman or some kind of something or people. And it's just everyone's fucking incompetent. And this is how we've come to this.
I started writing a novel about the formation of the culture war, and I started writing it in May 2016. So before Trump even won the Republican nomination. But one of the things that
it's just we were so innocent in 2016.
Yeah. But
we
the
thought
thing
it
is,
was bad because Bowie had died.
Yeah, sure.
Which was bad. But
Yeah. But the thing is, one of the thoughts that I really had and wrote down in a notebook is, I think the only way to put an end to the culture war is via a real war. And this is where I think we are now. Is I think it's going to be like this until, like the villains really get their asses kicked. And if the villains
we
don't...
have had it too good as well. So the people who are kind of complacent in the middle are like, oh, he's not so bad and everything. We don't, you have this backward slide in feminism and stuff because women, we don't remember what it was like to not be able to get a credit card or whatever. That is going out of living memory, and we are very dumb as humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also Second Coming, W.B. Yeats, what is the line? It's
The centre cannot hold.
the centre cannot hold, but it is the best have no conviction. And the worst are filled with passionate intensity.
Yeah, I sometimes read that line and I'm like, am I the worst? I think this is this lack of conviction.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's easy for me to say. I chose not to go into politics, and I just have a vanity podcast and rant about other people being incapable. And maybe we do need to have more people actually going into politics. There's so many skeletons in my closet. I'm never getting voted in.
I'd vote for you.
Would you?
Yeah.
That's fine. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Start a Megacan party.
Yeah, I'd love to see you do a 25-hour filibuster in a parliament like that guy.
You're not allowed Megacans. You're only allowed water, fizzy water, or milk. Apparently,
I can have milk.
Yeah, I heard this. Apparently, Mike Pence brought in some kind of
brought
law
in
that
milk.
you were I think Mike Pence or Mitt Romney, one of those two.
Right, one of those guys.
Milk on he was allowed to drink milk on the floor of the.
Oh, right.
So you couldn't sneak in a Megacan.
Well, or you just make a White Russian.
You get the gin and tonic one and say it's your fizzy thing, or a White Russian.
Yeah, White Russian.
Yeah.
What is it? Yep.
Good.
Anyway,
on that note,
very much, Howard, for coming in. And
nice to come in. Good.
Making, as horrifying as it is, like you say, we sit here and theorize in Germany, like, oh, what should we do? Blah, blah, blah. This is like actual people's lives, and it's very, very, very.
Well, look, it would be good if I could do this thing, and I'll tell you why. To build predictive AI, I know we're wrapping up, Konrad, and Konrad is waving at me.
It's okay. I didn't wave.
I just made that up.
Okay.
No, to actually build what you need to build, you'd need to save a couple of thousand soldiers. And so that would be the real value of it, is you would go to the front, you would build a kind of an AI library that would have real value, but the only way to get the data is being somewhere where soldiers are experiencing the trauma of war. And that I've seen a little bit of it, but you would need that at scale, and you would need every single scenario covered. And it would be that thing, someone is screaming, but actually what their biometric signals are telling you is they're fine. And then someone is just sitting there going, I'm all right. And, what you understand is they're not. That would be great if we could build that.
Okay.
All right then.
Very much.
That'd be great. Keep fighting the good fight, Howard.
Yep.
And thanks very much for listening, everyone.
Yeah, take care of yourselves.
Thank you, Megan.
Enjoy the if you're in Germany, lovely weather.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 Megacan, German news in English with a cocktail can. The German news, it's quite a test. With Megan's Mega, you're feeling refreshed. Megan's Megacan, German news in English with a cocktail can. Deutsche Nachrichten sind düster und schwer. Down the Mega,
Defy the fear.
Yeah.
It's actually it's quite a positive message to give to people.
I think so.
I like to think that we have quite a positive impact on our listeners.
I hope so.
Because we try and get them to defy the fear of listening to the news all day.
I mean, it's better than reading a German newspaper. Surely.
I would definitely recommend listening to our podcast more than reading any German newspaper.
German newspapers barely have pictures. Like fucking, it's just a brick of text.
Oh yes. And they seem to make a virtue of it. They think it's like so great to have no text.
Not like you Americans
pictures.
with your fucking
colour pictures.
decadent pictures in your newspapers.
Yeah,
What's that? A crossword puzzle? Oh, no wonder you had Trump. Jesus Christ, everyone! Like, there's a middle ground.
You have to concentrate on the news. It's very important, and you have to like keep it there.
Just have a mega.
Have a mega. Give us a picture every now and then.
Just a wee picture, maybe a,
yeah,
a diagram.